Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Sterling. I'm the Voting System Implementation Manager for the state of Georgia. Got a few things to go over. I want to clarify from the last couple of press conferences. We were talking about the number of cases that we're investigating for 2020, and I realized when we said 250, that was for all of 2020. What it really comes down to is about 101 cases from pre-general election time, and right now 132 cases that are involving the general election. And obviously with that volume of cases, we have 23 investigators. We had an initial meeting with the GBI either yesterday or the day before yesterday. I apologize, I'm not sure which day it was now. I think it was the day before yesterday, and about how we're going to be using some of the personnel and how we're going to work together moving forward. Included in those are several items that are being discussed in the House committee today. I know that I was just name checked up there that the Secretary and I, that we know all about this and haven't done anything. No, we get in affidavits and we put them into our investigations unit, and then our post-certified law enforcement investigators track them down. We do not walk in with one way or the other knowing how they're going to be, because that's why you have investigations. So we are following the process and following the law for these. Real quickly, for January 5, we are right now at 1,153,912 absentee ballots that have been put into our voter registration system requests. We have 14,824 that are still in the dashboard from the online request portal. It's for a total of 1,168,736. So far, we've had 415,862 requests made through the portal for the January 5th election. And so far, votes that have been cast and accepted, we're at 179,741. Now, on signature verification, that has always been a publicly viewable process under the state law. The state parties are aware of this. We saw only one county on the coast, it was either Camden or Glenn, I can't recall right now which one it was, where we had one observer go in to watch the signature verification process on a petition drive, not on actual absentee ballots. That's the only request we've had this year that we're aware of in the counties. So as a belt and suspenders, we sent out an official election bulletin to remind the elections directors around the state that signature match is a public process, as are all the pieces and processes involved in the elections process. David Schaefer, the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, requested we do this because he said counties had denied them this access. We said, okay, can you give us a list of those counties and we will investigate them. We've asked for this list. We have yet to receive it, but the second we do, we will begin an investigation of any counties that might have done that. So like I said, we're still waiting for that list. Let's see. We have an investigation right now on vote review panels in DeKalb County, how they were used, how they were staffed, and the processes they use, because we have a specific complaint that also came up in the House committee hearing, so we'll make sure that is in our litany of things that we are investigating. Coffee County, two things on Coffee County. You saw the release we did yesterday explaining what happened in their recount process, that they were the last county. We had been talking to them on Thursday about the situation where they were off by 50 votes. They had obviously two batches of 50 that they had scanned. Again, it was plainly obvious to us that they had double scanned a batch. And the director down there, for whatever reason, didn't like following the process. She had something else she wanted to do. So on that day, on Friday finally, we got a letter from them in the morning, continued to talk to them. She had unexplainable equipment issues. Remember, at the same time, 158 counties already finished. So, and one thing I said through this entire process is that the most fallible part of the system is human beings. And I am no different on that. Because when I had this press conference the other day, I said, I inadvertently said no one was in the office. That wasn't exactly correct. We talked to one young lady who was in the office but didn't have an awareness of what was happening. That was before the director, Ms. Martin, had come in. So she was upset that I had said they weren't there, so I'm making it clear that they had somebody in the office. Ms. Martin wasn't there yet. We also had a member of our staff talk to the county commission chairman and their county attorney, who we all had the letter but didn't quite understand what their plan and process was, because we were worried about getting recertification done. But since they submitted in upload that had no change. They did not have to have the board recertify them. Let's see. Another, just clearing up, I am not, in fact, a communist. I am not a commie. My stepmother is actually from Cuba, so it's actually a little more offensive than normal to be called that. And in my early career, I was very much on the side of the Contras against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua while I was at the University of Georgia. I even met with General Adolfo Calero, so again, this is silliness and unseriousness in a very serious time. I believe I can speak for the Secretary and myself, and likely the Governor. None of us have received any money from the Chinese communists. And as I'm saying this out loud, it seems even that much more ridiculous that I have to say it. But that's where we're at right now. So we're continuing to try to debunk these things. Again, former Mayor Giuliani played the repeatedly debunked State Farm video in the House committee today. Giving oxygen to this continued disinformation is leading to a continuing erosion of people's belief in our elections and our processes. We have rules, we have laws. The President has filed an official election challenge in Fulton County Superior Court, and that is the proper venue for going through these continuing claims. I've seen the numbers that have been submitted through that. We have begun our process of trying to investigate those, where they say there's like 10,000 felons. So far, our initial investigations of potential felon voting is at less than 100. They say there's people who are not even registered who cast a vote. There is no physical way to cast a vote unless you are in the voter registration system. You cannot get a ballot. You cannot get, there's no way to process it. So it is an impossibility. Let's see, 60 some odd thousand people who are younger than 18 years old. Again, the system will not allow you to produce a ballot for that individual. And in the beginnings of the ones we saw, all of them were registered at 17 and a half, which you can in the state, and they were turning 18 before the election day. So they are legal voters of the ones we've looked at so far. I'm not sure how deep we've gotten into it, but I know we began that process. Well, let's see. There's just so much disinformation. I think I said the other day, we have a shovel or against an ocean. It's an ocean that's being perpetuated by the President of the United States and his legal teams, and they have the rights to go through their due process. What they don't have a right to do is then bring them out in a way that they can't be questioned and they can't be, even looked at in a real way. And they give it they give it more heft than it deserves because the President is saying it. And I understand, people are still emotionally raw. I still have family members who just they cannot possibly imagine how Joe Biden has won the state of Georgia. He did, through several different ways. We had about over 20,000 people just skip the presidential race. They just didn't vote in it. They went down and voted in other races. If you take 8 counties, 6 in metro Atlanta, in the 2 around the University of Georgia, Clark and Oconee, David Perdue got more than 19,000 more votes than the president. If you look at this thing, we have a new report we're going to be looking at from a federal lab showing that there was no fraudulent voting in the state by comparisons to previous elections. Everything we saw here was relatively normal. People who do not understand what's been happening in the state in the last 10 years are the ones who are really thrown by this. Guess what? Gwinnett and Cobb County flipped from very Republican years ago to very Democrat now. The New York Times had a very good visual piece showing the way that the votes were cast in metro Atlanta in 1984, that Fulton County was the only Democrat county in that year. Then in 2000, there were 3 Democrat counties. Then in 2016, I think they were all but 2 Democrat counties. This is a normal progression you see in politics sometimes. DeKalb County was the hotbed heart of the Republican Party from the 60s into the 70s and into the 80s. Now it is the heart of the Democrat Party. These things happen. If you pay attention, you know that. The continuing disinformation is harmful. It's continuing to create a threat environment in the state. We've had people be followed. We've had an elections director now, I believe, had a car window broken out after getting a threatening email at 2 in the morning. And we have people stalking outside of our elections offices in Cobb County. We've had our warehouse manager. He was simply taking trash to the dumpster. And he had somebody follow him with a camera and telling him he was going to be going to prison. This guy, again, is just a guy with a regular job. We have to be responsible. We have to continue to be responsible. This office will continue to be responsible and follow the law and follow the rules. Yes, be upset. Yes, be ready to fight for January 5th, because that's the important thing. And no, do not listen to those who tell you don't vote on January 5th as a protest. That's silly. It's a silly thing to do, to deny yourself the vote. And I've had to have this argument with people I've known for 20 years. The best argument I've had to get through that to some people who believe that their vote didn't count, I said, okay, I'm telling you the theft didn't happen, but if you believe it happened, if you really believe somebody stole this from you, don't make it easier on them to steal it next time. Go vote. Get your friends to vote. Overwhelm it if you really believe that's what's happening. Because we have to have faith in our system at the end of the day. We're going to follow our laws, we're going to follow our rules, we're going to take all these investigations, all 132 of them, and they keep on growing every day. We're going to get them to their conclusion, bring the state election board, and somebody needs to be prosecuted, either by the Attorney General's office, the U.S. attorneys, or local DAs. We will refer them. That is the process here. But we have certified this election. The electors are going to vote on December 14th. And Joe Biden's going to be the President of the United States, barring some miraculous courtroom thing. And lastly, on this Texas lawsuit, we agree with Attorney General Carr that it is constitutionally wrong, wrong on the law, and wrong on the facts. So with that, I'll take any questions you all might have. Yeah, John.
Sir, another issue in the news right now is this matter of the hearing in federal court and the issue of 98,000 voters supposedly moved, and there's some questions about whether they really did live, whether they should have been purged. Plaintiffs are saying you illegally purged them and they want the judge to order them back on the rolls. Can you comment on where the state is in that issue?
I'm not totally positive on where we are on that particular case, and I thought it was more than that. But we have so many damn cases, John. I'm not sure which one's which. But if this is the one based on the research done by Greg Palast, which I believe it is, this is, again, a fundamental misunderstanding of how list maintenance works and how NCOA works. What happens is the NCOA list is live and active for about 2 years, okay? So,
And then you refer to
the National Change of Address, okay? Sorry, National Change of Address is NCOA. It's live and active for about 2 years. But as you know, you have to be made inactive, and then you have to miss 2 general elections. So we're talking about a process that can be 6 to 8 years. So if you're made inactive on the NCOA list over here, the NCOA list continues to go for 2-year spates this way. So when you go back to see these people who are being removed due to inactivity, and remember, we have to send them a postcard as well to remind them, say, hey, we're about to remove you from the list. We also put all 300 and some odd thousand out on the internet. Nobody stepped forward to say, oh, I shouldn't be on this list, and they could have easily re-registered. So we have those 200,000 that are over here. So if you go back to when they were first made inactive, that NCOA list is gone. There's nothing to refer back to. So they're basically misunderstanding how this process works, and that's the underlying part of it.
And the point is that you believe they should have been purged, or what is your argument on that?
Well, I mean, they were we properly followed the law based on the federal National Voter Registration Act that we have to do list maintenance. They were put on there because they were on the NCOA list. That's what started the process. Then they missed, and they were sent a mailing saying, hey, we're going to make you inactive if you don't respond to this. And then they missed 2 general elections in a row and didn't have any contact. And then we sent another postcard and said, hey, you're about to be canceled on the list if you do not respond to this or let us know. And we took the extraordinary step of putting it all online for anybody to look at. And as you all know, I believe some members of the media went door to door and could not find anybody who fit these things. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds in this, which I think I really just did. but that is the explanation for a large part of that. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Gabe, for your time. Quick question. So you mentioned Secretary of State's office debunked the videos, which we've seen over and over from State Farm Arena. In the investigative process, did the investigators depose those individuals that were seen in the video in question about what happened that night?
They have been not necessarily deposed. They have been questioned. I don't know if they were under oath. I don't believe they were. But this is one thing that's really kind of frustrating. We can't win for losing on this. The reason this all happened was at State Farm, Ralph Jones thought they were going to finish up at 11 and go home. He was the manager there. He was under that impression. If some of y'all were with us on election night, you may remember the secretary on 10:30 was pretty unhappy with Fulton County for knocking off early when the rest of the state was still working. And he made that very clear. So Chris Harvey, our elections director, called Rick Barron, the Fulton County elections director, who was at the English Street warehouse where he was doing regular election day activities, because it was election day. He said, what the heck are you doing knocking off? And Rick's like, we're not knocking off. What are you talking about? So he goes, well, we just heard reports that y'all are closing up shop over there. He says, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to continue to work. So he calls Ralph. And you can see on the videotape, Ralph take the call. And he's like, his shoulders slumped slightly. And he's like, and you can see him stand over to the boxes and continue to seal for a second because he did not want to tell those people who had been there. Because if you watch the videotape, the same people that were there at 11 o'clock at night were the same ones that were there at 7 in the morning. They had a long day. So because the Secretary of State's office got on to them about continuing to work, then they decided we will continue to work. And now they're having this giant claim there was some Ocean's 11 type scheme that was put into place, as opposed to what is obviously happening in the real world, that you have people who want to go home and they were exhausted, and then their boss coming down on them saying, no, you got to work some more. And that's how that all happened, because we asked them to continue to work. So, it's Fulton County, man. I don't know. I think Ralph just thought they were going to stop at 11. That's a good time to stop because they'd been there all day. I have no specific rationale as to why he thought that, because Rick did not think that, but Ralph did. And that was where there was a disconnect at that time. Yeah, Mark. A long time no see. Everybody, Mark is obviously well paid. He was on vacation for 3 weeks. Two. It felt like 3. It feels like a month, but okay.
I want to look at early voting, which starts Monday.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect in terms of turnout, in terms of early voting accessibility? There have been some cutbacks in early voting sites in some counties. Other counties have a lot. And are there any changes since the general, any improvements that you're seeing counties make?
Early voting was a very good process in the general election, with the exception of the first day when we had the slowdown in ENET. I guess it was the first 2 days. That item was fixed, and since that point, we've seen nothing really slow it down. I know Cobb County got some pressure because they went to 5 locations. I think they moved that back to 7 now. But for the most part, most counties are keeping a sufficient number open. We anticipate a lighter turnout than in the general election, which is what you'd normally expect in a runoff. But since we were already at nearly 1.2 million requests and we had 1.3 million votes by absentee last time, I anticipate a pretty high amount. Listen, we can't turn on the TV or turn on the radio without hearing an ad for these things. And I'm sure some people, as a reminder to people, if you do go vote, the Republicans and Democrats get those lists, and they will likely take you off the mailing list. So that is a big advantage to voting early, so that you can get off those lists and stop getting the mail. So I anticipate, we don't really know, it's hard to gauge these things until you have the first thing happen. As always, on the first day of early voting, it's kind of like when the iPhone comes out. People want to go get the new iPhone at the Apple store. They're going to stand in line for a while. I wouldn't do it, but I know there's going to be a lot of people who will. So I anticipate we'll have some lines on the opening day of early voting. Yes, again.
So the governor has repeatedly asked the Secretary of State's office to do a signature verification audit.
Mm-hmm.
This is different than the audit that's already been completed.
Mm-hmm.
Will the Secretary of State's office be doing that of a random sample of some of these absentee ballots?
As we've looked before and over this process, our investigatory powers, which is the normal way we do this, would be we have a specific investigation, we have a specific thing to look at. With the continuing amount of discussion around this, I don't want to speak for the Secretary because I don't think any decision's been made, but we've always been open to the possibility of being able to do that if we can get the resources to do it. The Speaker has indicated they will get resources to do that potentially, and if we know that the resources are going to be there, of course they're not in session until January. We'd have to be going on faith if we did it any earlier than that. There may be a possibility of something like that, but I'm not ready to say for certain just yet because, again, the investigatory powers we have are usually for specific allegations of something going wrong. And right now, of the 132 cases, I think of the 233 cases I have listed here, 18 of them have to do with absentee ballots. Many of them have from the primary, but also some for the general election.
Well, the resource issue, I mean, people are concerned not only about the timeline with the electors here in the state of Georgia, which is at times almost up there, presidential electors, but also the January 5th runoff, and just getting to the bottom of this and seeing if there is anything that is nefarious or...
But let me again remind everybody, no one has provided a shred, a scintilla of evidence that signatures weren't matched. No one. They made the allegation repeatedly, but there's zero evidence that that's the case. So when you say get to the bottom of it, I mean, here's a few other things along those kind of lines. When we're talking about, in fact, that reminds me, I apologize. I'm going to go back to this in 1 second. Somebody remind me about adjudication in a moment. we're going to have to do some things, obviously, to reinstill faith in the system because the President of the United States and many of his enablers have undermined it through continuing disinformation and falsehoods that are based on nothing other than speculation, no evidence. So going back to one thing from Coffee County, I forgot there was two things I said about Coffee County. I forgot the second one. Some of y'all may have seen a video today wherein Ms. Martin, their director, was showing people how she can change votes. Okay, it's adjudication. You're supposed to have a voter review panel there to make decisions. And in that system, there's an audit mark that goes along with it and a log file so we can see who has done what. So that's kind of how adjudication works. I don't know what it looks like. I make a decision and I change it in the system so that we can actually cast that vote. What she showed was not that. So if I can go in the street and shoot someone, that would be against the law. What she was doing would be against the law if she did that. So it's a little disingenuous to say, oh, it's a massive hole in the system. No, it's how the system's supposed to work. It is an improvement on the old system that if you had an overvote or an unknown mark, that vote is just gone. In this one, human beings can then look at it to make the decision. And it means we're more likely to enfranchise people and get to that point. The old system, like I said, overvote, you're out, and if it's mismarked, doesn't matter. Now we have a system that allows an extra level of review to protect each voter's vote. And trying to turn it into something that is somehow nefarious is, again, an undermining of the system that we've opened an investigation into Coffee County over both how they handle the recount and that video. And just for security purposes, insanely, she put this on YouTube, or somebody did, working with, I believe, Ms. Powell. She put her password out on YouTube. So we're going to have to deal with her on security side for that as well. So, again, it's frustrating to have to deal with a lot of these things. And I know y'all are sick of having me come out here and debunk things over and over and over again, and it feels like we're a little creek against an ocean. Yes?
So you had mentioned because of all this disinformation that you have to kind of reinstill trust for the voters. So what immediate, or if any, immediate actions is the office taking to make changes to the current voting system?
No one has made anything to say the voting system is in some way not working properly. Let's keep that in mind. There's been zero evidence to that effect. None. So the main thing we did in order to address the specific thing on signature matching was to remind everybody this is an open process. You have to be careful with that process because when you were doing the signature match on the screen, there is personal identifying information on there which the counties are also legally obligated to protect. So we don't have a process where a Republican and Democrat elector will stand over their shoulders to say, I challenge that. That's not how this works. However, I will remind everybody, in the majority of counties, except for the small amount of them that have probate judges running these, there are Republican and Democrat election board members who have unlimited access to the process. They actually have jobs they can do. I mean, these are not honorary appointments. If you're really there for a Republican Democrat Party, you should be in those meetings and on those processes to make sure the employees that you have hired, those elections boards hire the elections director. The elections director hires the staff. It is the obligation of Republican and Democrat board members alike to assure that the laws of the state of Georgia and the rules of the state elections board are followed. I strongly encourage every county's election board members to be engaged from the time we begin this process for logic and accuracy testing, for the BMDs will be used on December 14th, all the way through to when they do the final absentee ballot count after January 5th. They have a job, they have an obligation, and they have a duty. And having those individuals engage in their local communities will be another step to helping build trust again in the system. Yeah, John?
Back to early voting.
Yeah.
Are you confident that all 159 counties will have enough places for people to go vote early, enough people to work those places? For example, in Forsyth County, I understand there was a proposal to expand the number of voting locations for early voting and maybe even expand the hours, and that was rejected. Are you confident that still everything's okay?
I feel very confident everything's okay. We've got 3 weeks. If you can't figure out some time in 3 weeks when the lines are down, and most of the big counties now actually have information on their website or on their apps showing what the lines are at each individual location. So by using technology, I think we're going to make better sure that people can vote and take advantage of that early voting option.
And so, for example, in Forsyth County, the proposal to expand the number of locations, and
Listen, I say this repeatedly. Counties run elections. We encourage counties to have as many voting options as possible. We encourage counties to open new polling locations. We encourage them to keep as many available things open for their voters to take advantage of. However, there are things called limited resources, and we have really stretched them a lot this year. And this is the same time when we see county budgets shrinking due to COVID. So there's many things that have to squeeze on them on many different sides, and we are cognizant of that. We are still trying to figure out the best way to help pay for part of the cost they had for the hand tally and the recount. These elections directors and these elections workers are getting worked into the ground, and we're doing everything we can to support them. So I'm not going to second guess some of these decisions that they have to make because of their own limited resources. That it? All right. Thank you all so much. If I don't see you, have a good and safe weekend, and go Dogs.